my big goal, I keep repeating all the time, is you can't do what I'm doing. You're going to place it with something you can do. And it's brave and courageous to do that. And you have the autonomy to choose what's right for your body right now. And really reminding that of people, because how we do our mat work, I really do believe can affect how we do things in our life. And if we can practice being aware of our movement.
Hello. Welcome back to the Connected Mindset Live. I'm your host, Greg Tomczyk. Another incredible conversation today on better connecting with the world around you. We have Miss Leslie Logan on the show with us. Leslie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
Connection's a key word in my life.
Yeah, we love connection. And so where we like to start the show is, what mission are you on, and what are you hoping that each person listening in today walks away with?
The mission I'm on is actually more bodies doing Pilates, and we can dive into what that means more. And the thing I want everyone to walk away with is, whether you do Pilates or not, is actually having a connection with yourself and having a self practice that puts you front and center, so that you can connect more with others.
I love that. Yeah, practices are important. As an athlete, practice was key. I think a lot of people don't have the practices to connect with themselves. It's a lot about connecting with the outside world. I'd love to hear a little bit about how Pilates came into your life and how you came to be able to deliver that out to the world around you.
Yeah, so I think it's important. I share that I actually did not ever anticipate taking Pilates. I was an athlete all through high school, and I decided not to take on a scholarship for college. And so I became a trainer and was doing side jobs and was working in retail. And I thought my life was going to be in high-end fashion. Like, I just loved it, you guys. And what happened is I graduated college, and all of my friends left. They left the town, went to college. And so here I was in a not new town, but like starting life over again, needing friends and trying to figure out who I was, even though I had this amazing job. The girl I worked with was like, "You should do Pilates with me." And I said, "That's a BS workout. It can't do what it says it's going to do. It's an infomercial workout," because I'd only seen infomercials of it. But I needed a friend. So I thought, I'll go to one class. I'll never have to go again. I'm in the first class, and in the first exercise, I felt parts of my body I never felt before. And I was like, it was like just all these different parts of it. And as you're an athlete, like, it would be weird to feel parts of your body you never felt before. Like, your body is the thing that you use. And so it was very exciting and unique to me. And I changed the entire schedule at the store I was managing so I could go every day. What I discovered in going every day, and by the way, no intention of actually teaching it, just this is going to be my hobby, and I would stay in retail, is the more time I spent in class, because when you do Pilates, you can actually only focus on what's moving from where. Your mind actually can only focus on how your body is moving. It is a strength and flexibility practice, but it is a balance of the two. So I do lift weights. I do go to the gym. I love to run. You can think about groceries. You could be thinking about a meeting you're going to do. Like, you can still somehow count to 10 and do all these other thinking things. But in Pilates, if you're doing it correctly, you truly cannot. You have to be very inward. And so it's a movement meditation. And as someone who's struggled with seated meditation, this movement meditation was so amazing for me. It was something I never really understood. And one day in my workout, I was like, I don't really love living here. And it was just like this thought that, like, I was like aware of, like, I'm so happy in this moment, but I'm not happy here. And I went to work that day, and there's an opportunity for the same job that I had at a different store in a different town. And I was like, I want to transfer. And then I kept doing Pilates, kept doing the job at this new place. And I was like, maybe I could teach this, right? Like, maybe I could help other people with this. And so my entire life has been, the more I spend time with myself and my Pilates practice, the more I'm aware of how I feel, how I'm feeling that day, how I'm feeling about bigger issues. I can go into it super stressed out and leave with clarity. And I didn't even think about the problem the whole time. And so that is kind of how I got into it. And the hilarity of everything is, like, somehow you connect all the dots looking back. But I happen to live down the street from one of Joseph Pilates' clients. And so
Mhm.
I got to
Wow.
study with as close to the source as I ever could want without even
Mhm.
knowing it. And he really changed my life as I grew up as a perfectionist and
Mhm.
overachiever. My parents were very, very big on better get straight A's,
Yeah.
and you're only as fast. Like someone's always gonna be faster, stronger, smarter than you. So you like today is the best day. You got to do it all over tomorrow. And so,
Mhm.
not that that was terrible, but it wasn't great. And
Yeah.
so I really, as a teacher, I was really successful really early on. And then when I met this teacher, he really changed that perspective and helped me like ditch my perfection in a different way and really focus on curiosity. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, that's so funny. I'm so curious in my practice. And the more I applied curiosity to my practice and the way I teach and how I interact with life, it's kind of led me to all the things we've created in the business.
Wow. What a journey. Yeah. I think a lot of our listeners have practiced, whether it's running or lifting, kind of the traditional, the yogas, the things of that nature. One of the big things we talk about on the show is the nervous system. And it
Mm,
sounds like at the core of Pilates, that mindful meditation, that mindful movement,
yeah.
connecting your body and your mind in a way that you have to be focused on what you're doing. And it's
Hmm.
not a mindless activity like lifting can be sometimes, or running. For me, I run my thoughts out through my feet, I like to
Hmm.
say. And I think having something where you have to focus on that movement, it shows you how to be in the process and how
Hmm.
to, I think that's why you mentioned you felt something you've never felt before,
Hmm.
because you were focusing on your body in a different way than you haven't done before,
Yeah.
which is incredible from that standpoint. So Joseph Pilates, how did Pilates start? That's kind of where
Yeah,
my mind continues
let's
to
talk
go.
about
Yeah.
that because like I think it's important everyone's educated on this.
Hmm.
In there's a lot of myths out there and also
Hmm.
incorrect information. And if you recently watched the SNL and they called it girl horror,
Right.
I think that you should know as everything you saw on there. I wouldn't actually call it Pilates. It was Pilates in theory and like inspired, but
Hmm.
Joseph Pilates, um, first of all, he actually grew up in Germany. He was born with rickets and asthma and not a healthy child. It was a very poor family. Uh, he was in the circus. He was a very established and successful boxer. And he ended up in the Isle of Man during the internment camps of World War One. How he got there is very fascinating. There's a lot of curiosity there. I definitely think he might have been a stowaway on a ship, so he was
Hmm.
probably a prisoner
Wow.
for different reasons. But
Hmm.
in that time in Europe, there was a lot of functional fitness going on. If you actually look back at old exercise books from the early 1900s, you'll see this like functional movement going on. And a lot of the moves are very much from the mat Pilates work that Joseph Pilates created for us. And he was using these movements while in this internment camp. And when he got out, he found his way to the US. And it's very interesting, actually, came to the US 2 times. The second time he stayed, he met his wife. I'll put it in air quotes because they were never actually married, which makes it very scandalous that they were living together back in the
Hmm.
20s. But he came to the US in the 20s to bring Pilates with him. And he created different pieces of equipment. He wrote a book that has his mat work in there, which was his goal was for every single person to be doing his work. He was so
Wow.
passionate about it. He wrote to presidents. Like there are letters that he wrote to like
Hmm.
Kennedy and like everyone should be doing
Hmm.
his method, which I just really love his passion for his work.
Hmm.
And his goal was that you became a balanced, strong person. He saw that people were back in the 40s sitting too much. Can you
Yeah.
imagine sitting too much? And so
Wow.
back then you also have to understand that Pilates, like working out in general, was not something most people did. And if they did, it was only for men. They truly did believe that women, if they worked out, they would grow hair on their chest, they become
Yeah.
infertile. And that is in my lifetime, right? In our
Hmm.
lifetimes, like a woman tried to run the Boston Marathon and she was
Hmm.
chased, right? Like that was a
Wow.
big deal. And so it was only until the 80s that women were really working out, and that was for
Hmm.
jazzercise. So he brought this method, but what happened is dancers, very famous prima ballerinas, were getting injured and they were being sent to him to be fixed. And so he would teach these people, and his whole thing was to avoid the part of the body that was injured. He believed that injuries were happening because of imbalances. And that is like, I think, a really great metaphor. Like, we make mistakes when there's an imbalance. You don't
Mhm.
sleep, you do something that screws a mistake up at work, right? Like, you're not
Yeah.
eating right. Like,
Mhm.
anytime there's an imbalance in your life, mistakes can happen or injuries can happen. And so
Mhm.
his really big thing was like, you should not be too strong because that can create injury, but you can't be too flexible because that can create injury. And so he really wanted everybody to be doing this. And also, how he taught them is you only did a few sessions with him, and then you
Mhm.
came in on your own. There was no schedules. You didn't book a time. You would just show up,
Yeah.
put your money down on the counter, and
Mhm.
you would do your workout. And I found that really fascinating because so many of us
Mhm.
today, we work out. Maybe you're listening, you even go to a Pilates class. I bet you if I were to ask you if that teacher ever is quiet, there's probably not a
Yeah.
single rep. They're not telling you what to do, when to do
Mhm.
it, like counting. I used to take Peloton, and it's like they talk the whole time. I'm like, I like the song. Let's listen to the song.
Yeah.
So what we have turned into in our life is a lot of us are moving and calling it self-care, but we're not autonomous. We're not actually doing things on our own. And his big thing was that you did this work on your own. He even created the Wonder Chair, which means
Mhm.
wonder in German. And it was the first piece of home gym equipment. It was so his clients could work, do
Mhm.
their Pilates when they left New York to go to the Hamptons in the summer. So he had
Oh,
this
yeah.
mission. And so today, even though I teach classes that are online, and so everyone's obviously listening to me, my big goal, I keep repeating all the time, is if you can't do what I'm doing, you're in a place that was something you can do. And it's
Mhm.
brave and courageous to do that. And you have the autonomy to choose what's right for your body right now. And really
Mhm.
giving people, reminding that of people, because how we do our mat work, I really do believe can affect how we do things in our life. And if we can
Mhm.
practice being aware of our movements, but also being aware, I'm not able to do that today. What can I do? When you get into your work, when you get into something and something comes up, I can't do that. Your brain's like, well, it is possible. It's a muscle that
Mhm.
we practice in different areas.
Wow. Yeah, the history is fascinating. I actually haven't heard that before, and I think a lot of us want to be. I think that's how the fitness world has evolved. Is you want to be told like every move, every thought to
Mm-hmm.
have, because it's a practice of like working your body out
Mm-hmm.
and like letting your mind go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to something that I'm big on, which is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have this foundational practice where you're giving yourself grace, you're having too much rigidity, it's not it's 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every night, and you do it throughout the rhythm of your life when you see fit. I think that's so critical that a lot of people want to overstructure things,
Yeah.
which creates a lot of stress in the nervous system. So
Yeah.
when you go to actually do the workout, you're tight, you're tense, you're maybe
Mm-hmm.
even angry. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be a good thing to bring into an exercise like this. That's supposed to be the connection of your mind and your body,
Mm-hmm.
doing something that helps release
Yeah.
those things as opposed to bring more pain.
Well, and I think like, you know, I listen to a lot of people say, "Oh, I have to go to a class. I have to have a set time that I go,
Mhm,
otherwise I won't do it." And I think to myself, like, if you were to call yourself someone who would be an employee,
mhm,
someone who likes to check a box, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're listening to that and that is you, that is fine with me. But if you
mhm,
are someone who considers yourself to be a leader, an innovator, an ideas
mhm,
person, you should have the ability to move on your own time
mhm.
and that's a great way to practice that because I really do think we actually need to spend more time with ourselves in
Yeah.
movement. So trauma and energies leave the body through movement. And I don't mean
Mhm,
just big T trauma, like little T trauma, like little
mhm,
things. And if you are waiting until the 6 p.m. class that you could get a spot in, and it doesn't have to be Pilates, it could be anything, to move your body, and then all you're being told is what to do the whole time,
mhm,
it is really hard for you to kind of understand who you are and how you move. And
mhm,
so, yes, when you like take a class with me, I am telling you what to do, but there are many
mhm.
reps where I just say nothing. I'm like, 3 more. And
Yeah.
that is on purpose. It's to
Yeah.
help you practice, like, okay, 3 more, and be in your own, hear your own self, feel what your
Mhm,
body is feeling, and give yourself that permission to have time with yourself. We don't have,
mhm.
like, I love listening to
Yeah.
podcasts. I love that you're listening to this podcast. Hope you're
Yeah.
listening to this podcast while you're moving. But But also, like, we don't, like, what if the workout is the only time we get to have some spots where we actually just listen to what's going on in ourselves, and we
Mhm.
can be curious about that, because it really does affect, like, the days that I start my mat practice and I go into the first exercise, I'm like, oh, my legs feel really heavy
Yeah.
today. Oh, I'm feeling really sluggish.
Mhm.
It's good information for me to know, because if I'm going to go into a day that I also have 17 priorities, maybe it's a
Mhm.
good day to go, okay, we'll probably only get 3 of these done. Like,
Yeah.
what are the most important 3, rather than setting ourselves up to fail and not get there at all.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so much there from living a good life
Yeah.
that is unpacked by this activity that a lot of people just think of an activity, like they just associate it with another activity in their day, just
Hmm.
like, a Zoom meeting or some type of conference they're going to. So I think there's a lot of depth there that I think a lot of people that are listening to this show are looking for. They probably tried working out, they've tried yoga, they got put on the wait list for that class they wanted to do at the gym, and as we all know, you're putting, with somebody else putting you on a wait list, you're putting your serenity, your peace of mind on a
Hmm.
wait list, and it should be on your schedule, and for that institution to align with that,
Hmm.
hopefully, or have it be your second workout. It
Hmm.
shouldn't be over dependent on external sources to be able to have that connection with yourself, which I think is important. How did you kind of come to that realization of it shouldn't necessarily be on an institution's schedule? It should be kind of that self-autonomous type practice.
Yeah. So first, I think, like, I can say that because I was the person who was like, I gotta go
Mhm.
to the class.
Yeah.
I gotta sign up. I'll have the
Mhm.
unlimited membership and I'll go
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Mhm.
And when I probably 6 years into teaching, um, in my own practice, what happened is I started going to this studio where one of Joseph Elias' clients was at, and had his proteges, like, who've been
Mhm.
teaching for 30 years. So, like, they're as an elder as he is
Mhm.
in this industry. They had, the only way they did classes is if you worked yourself out. So you signed up for the class, but they didn't tell you what you were going to do.
Really?
And it was the weirdest thing to
Wow.
be. Here I'm a studied teacher. I'd gone through at
Mhm.
that point 2 comprehensive certifications. Means we're talking now over 1,000 hours of just studying with a mentor, not to mention all the
Mhm.
teachers, right? So here I was, and the first session, I was like, I'm just gonna start moving, and they're like, yep, and I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
And it was, I will say, it was weird. It was weird to
Mhm.
move on my own, and I'm not saying everyone can do that, which is why, like, I do offer the classes I offer. I will tell you what to do, but I like to give you space and to then be with yourself in those moves. But what I discovered in that autonomy is I wasn't being told what to feel. A
Mhm.
lot of workouts, and I'm not going to just say Pilates, I'm going to say I've done a ton of modalities out there. I'll try anything. And they tell you, you should be feeling this here. You should be feeling this here.
Mhm.
You should be feeling this here. And it's like, I should, but if I'm not, then what's wrong? And, like, that causes doubt, that causes distraction.
Yeah.
We start to think there's something wrong with us, when maybe there's not anything wrong with it at all. You are putting trust in a trainer you think they actually took an anatomy class. Like, sometimes they do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes
Right.
they're training a weekend.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Okay.
I think we start outsourcing how we should feel based on these other teachers. And so it
Mhm.
became this discovery in myself. And what happened is I'd always taught in studios that had multiple pieces of the same, so 2 reformers or 2 chairs or 2 of
Mhm.
everything or 4 of everything, so I could have 2 to 4 people doing the exact same thing. But what was happening is, like, okay, this husband and wife came. Well, he has a situation where his hands are like this, and
Mhm.
she has a knee thing and a hip thing and an
Yeah.
arthritis. They need different workouts.
Mhm.
Putting them on the same piece of equipment actually makes them compare themselves to each other.
Yeah.
And it would drive me crazy because, like, he should be
Mhm.
doing it like this. I'm like, you don't have to tell him what to do. I'll tell him what
Mhm.
to do. She's not listening. I know. Don't worry about it. I run this show. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so when I opened up my own studio, I was like, how can I open my own studio and make this work? Because equipment costs a lot of money. And
Mhm.
so I actually only bought one of everything and recreated what I was doing with my teacher. And so that couple and everyone else who was a 2 or 3 person or 4 person session, they had to do their own workout. And
Mhm.
they stopped comparing their practice to the other person's practice. And they didn't like it the first time. I'll tell you, just like me, I was like, am I doing the right thing? They didn't like it either. And then 2 weeks later, like, this is the best workout we've ever had because they were in their own workout.
Yeah.
And so when the pandemic happened, I had to shut my studio down. I was already online with my classes. And one thing that I could trust is like, even though I am guiding people what to do, they're on their own. They can't even compare themselves to me because they really can't be looking at the computer and themselves at the same time.
Yeah.
So they're in their own journey, and we've heard this before, and I'm not the first one to say this. We're not supposed to compare ourselves to someone else's journey. Someone's your chapter 1 can't be compared to someone else's chapter 7. What's really cool about having autonomy and independence in the movement practice we do is you are not distracted by how far along you think someone is. You can only, like, yesterday this was harder to do, today this is easier to do. That's the only person you compare yourself to.
Wow. Yeah, that's something the fitness world has let happen by default, which I think is, nobody's body's the same. So when you're trying to do the same thing as somebody who's been working out for 20 years and you're just starting to work out, you're going to injure yourself because you're rushing the process. I think that's something I saw in baseball when people were trying to like throw like me, or I was trying to throw like Adam Wainwright, who's, many years in the major leagues, and you can't be like somebody. You have to have that unique approach. It's cool that you saw going to the digital world as almost an advantage because people weren't comparing themselves to somebody next to them. And getting the only one piece of equipment to make it, was it like a circuit? Is that what
you created? If you can think of it like a circuit, like that's kind of how I saw it. And in my studio, that's how I teach a lot of teachers and a lot of studios today. I'm like, 12 reformers. So a reformer is about $5,000 without all the bells and whistles. So you times that by 12, you're at 60 grand before you've even put a plant in your studio. Like that's a lot of money, right? And so what I tell a lot of students is like, you can do a lot with 500, 600 square feet. And that's what I did. And so I had one of everything. It was like a circuit. So you would do 15 minutes over here and 15 minutes over here, and they could rotate. And now a lot of people do have Pilates equipment in their homes. It is something you can have, like the one chair I was talking about. It's not $1,200. It's cheaper than a Peloton, and you can actually do a whole strength-based workout that is going to increase flexibility, and it fits in the corner of your house. So you don't actually have to reformer. So we do have equipment classes that we offer, but to me, I saw virtual as a way for us to take an opportunity to be with ourselves, even though a lot of people will zone out on a scroll. That's not what the workouts are intended for. And then when I brought in other teachers, it was because I want to bring on different body types. Because I would tell people, you're not going to, my husband is 6 feet tall. I'm 5'9". Our inseam is the same. So the exercises are going to look different on me than on someone who's 5.5 feet tall, is more proportional. So I brought on all these different women who are incredible teachers with different body types and heights, and so that people could see themselves in another person, because a lot of us are visual learners, but also all have the same message that you're going to look different. And it's brave and courageous to replace what you can't do yet with what you can. And I think what's really cool is some people are like, oh, I'm on Zoom all day. The last thing I want to do is do a workout by myself. I get that. Like, we want to be around other people. And if you're an extrovert, that's key. But just because you've been alone all day doesn't mean you're alone with yourself. And it doesn't mean that you are connecting to yourself. And, you and I have talked about this on my podcast, like that trust in yourself is actually the most important thing, is what puts you out there. I would put trust and connection in that same category. Like, you have to have that in you to have it out there. And if I don't have my Pilates practice, it's not that I work out 7 days a week, but so one day here or there, that's fine. But if I go several days, I start doubting myself in my own business. I start feeling out of alignment. I kind of am wondering, why do I feel a little off? It's because I haven't taken a moment to be inside just my body.
Yeah. Wow. That's extremely powerful. So you went from learning Pilates to doing it as a practice, to being a teacher, to opening a studio, to now coaching people to have their own studios, coaching people in their business and the retreats. What has that journey been like from the student to the teacher, and kind of now helping other people teach other people how to create businesses and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I will say, like, nothing is really linear. And I didn't know what was possible in my industry when I first
Mhm.
got into it. I thought I'll teach and I'll learn from these people, living in Los Angeles at the time, I mean, one of Joe Supply's clients lived there. So
Mhm.
then there was all these people who've been teaching for 30 plus years who lived there. So the
Mhm.
imposter syndrome of me
Yeah.
becoming a teacher in 2008 during a recession, like I was like, who am I? Right.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting when I first started teaching is that I had a private studio. I rented space from so I could build my own business.
Mhm.
And then I had a place where I was an employee. It was a high end fitness facility, and they would send you people like this. They're a brand new member, and they get a free session.
Mhm.
And my job was to get them to buy another session. And every single first time client I had bought a package. And I got within 3 months, I was so busy, I had to quit my real job, which was
Mhm.
retail in 2008, which was not going to go so well for me if I'd stayed anyways. But it shocked everyone. They're like, how are you selling so much Pilates when everyone's canceling cable right now?
Mhm.
And it was the first interesting question I had. And so I remember having so much imposter syndrome because, like, who was I to get these clients? So I started looking at these people who've been teaching 10, 15, 20 years and really seeing what they were doing. I realized that they were trying to sell Pilates. And I didn't have the years of experience that they had. So I had to connect with them on a different level.
Mhm.
And that connection was what they were buying. They were buying the trust that I saw them, that I understood them. People were coming to Pilates to either look like me or to lose weight. It was Los Angeles in 2008, so
Mhm.
it's a different time, different era, and I have to go. So I look like this because like genetics, hormones.
Mhm.
I was 20, I was 25, like I'm 25. I can't give you that, but here's what I
Mhm.
can do. Here's what Pilates can do for you. Yes, it's a workout, but without nutrition and healthy hormones and balanced in that and your sleep, I don't know
Mhm.
what else I can get you except for strength and flexibility, right? But
Mhm.
I can do the best I can with that if you can do those other things. And because I had that question, I actually started coaching teachers in my first
Mhm.
year of being a Pilates teacher on the business side of things because my
Really?
degree in college and my
Yeah.
years in retail. And so I started getting flown
Mhm.
around the world to help studios grow their
Wow.
business when I'd only been teaching for a couple of years. Then, 5 years into traveling and coaching people on their business, people found out, I started studying with Joe Supply's clients. So they're like, wait a
Mhm.
minute, you have all this Pilates knowledge that's so close to the source. So I
Mhm.
continued. I was traveling
Wow.
115 plus thousand miles a year before the pandemic. I was
Mhm.
huge. I'm huge in Korea, guys, and
Yeah.
Poland. It's a big joke. Like, I'd be in a plane going
Mhm.
to Australia. Like, what are you going from? Like, work? And like, what do you do? I'm a Pilates instructor. Like, don't they
Mhm.
have Pilates instructors there? I'm like,
Yeah.
they do. That's what I'm going. So I got to do all these things kind of out of order, but also as I look back, because I've gotten to do everything there is to do in this industry, I can actually help the most
Mhm.
people understand the pros and cons of, like, yes, it's really sexy to travel, but it's also not fun to go to Australia for 3 days.
Yeah, right.
And it's really
Yeah.
hard to go there if your business can't support you to be there for longer than 3 days. And so
Mhm.
really working with people on making sure that the goals they have, their business can support those goals without it being a distraction. And I never intended to have my own studio. That was never a goal. It was just because it just became something I needed to have since I was filming
Mhm.
so much content. And so when it closed, it actually wasn't sad. It was like,
Mhm.
that was just life for what was needed. My husband was the reason we did online. Like, I
Mhm.
had no intention of being online. I thought there was already enough online. There was two other platforms out there doing Pilates online. So I was like, what else could I add to it? And he was like, well, you're traveling a lot and your clients aren't going to
Mhm.
be as excited as you are. And I was like, well, that's a good point. And what we did was really, I fought him a little bit. I said, well, I will only do it if it can be different than what's out there.
Mhm.
And so they have thousands of classes. I'm going to have one,
Yeah.
and we're going to take it away. And we're going to do these things
Mhm.
because how can I find a unique differentiator that will actually help people where the other ones can help a lot of
Mhm.
people, but not everyone. The people who do need accountability, the people who do need community, I want to have those things in our platform. And so it was it's been a crazy journey, and to sit here after teaching for 15 years and have trained as many people as I have, one of the things I think about as being a mentor and a business coach in this industry is actually that I learn more from every single person that I teach than I
Mhm.
have. Like, I know a lot of things, but every day I actually go, oh, that's interesting. I would never put those two things together. Even in the exercises, I see a different body move.
Mhm.
I'm like, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
So I find that as long as you never stop learning, it's in the industry, it will stay interesting. And I'm more inspired to keep going.
Yeah, I think that curiosity skill is so important from a business owner standpoint, or someone that's continually growing and refining who they are. I love the teacher of teachers, because once you've been a student and you become a teacher and then you start teaching other people what you've learned, one of the concepts that you mentioned was people weren't necessarily buying what people were selling when it was Pilates. And I think a lot of business owners listening in, they're trying to sell that product or service specifically how everybody else is selling it. And they think that people are just going to buy from them by default. But it sounds like you found kind of that unique formula. People were buying the story, the connection, the result of that more holistic approach, and how this plugged into it. Can you talk a little bit about coming to that realization and then kind of carrying that on to your business today?
Yeah, so I went to college to be an athletic trainer for an NFL team. That was like my goal in life. Okay. And what happened in my first year of college is I actually lost feeling in my hands. And that is a problem for giving people touch points, wrapping, like feeling I couldn't feel anything, and I'm left-handed, but like you need to. I need dexterity. And so I had to make a big decision about what I was going to do with my, like the pressure we put on people in colleges, and say, what was I going to do with my life? Because I was going to a very expensive school. And so I was like, what major can I have and still graduate on time? I was like, show me the options. And so communications with a focus on interpersonal and organizational was an option I could switch to that didn't require statistics. So I had there was a couple requirements. I had to stay on track to graduate, and I didn't want stats. I was like, if I'm not going to be an athletic trainer, I don't want to do that anymore. So that was an option. And it's very funny. As I went through, I was like, what am I going to do with this degree? Like what? Well, I don't know what I'm doing with interpersonal organizational communication. But one of the things that I studied was this theory about how if you can, and mimic can have a negative word, but people want to feel seen.
Yep.
And so if you can use the words that they use in conversation with them, they build trust with you.
Yep.
If you can match their mannerisms or their cadence or things like this, there's an unconscious connection that they can build with, and they feel comfortable with you. And so when I had a retail shop, I didn't ask people, what are you shopping for today? No one is shopping for anything. Okay. They're not, like, they are shopping for retail therapy. They have had a bad day. And I'm also selling high-end purses and diamond necklaces that are in the shape of a pretzel. Yes, you heard that correctly, a pretzel. They are not looking for that. I had to ask them other interesting questions that would open up a conversation with that, let them, where I could show them my favorite thing right now, or what would be so fun with what they're wearing. And of course they know I'm trying to sell to them, so it can't be like that.
Yeah.
So I just really got to know people. And one of the things that would come out of retail is like, oh, you mentioned this. You mentioned your friend's going through this right now. Here are these things that could be really helpful, and here's why. So when I got into Pilates, no Pilates teacher training program tells you how to sell anything. They just teach you how to teach it. So when people came for their first session and I asked them what are they focusing on right now? What's going on with their body? How are they feeling? What I would tell them is, so you said you're here because you want to have nice arms for your wedding. Here's what I can actually tell you. Your posture is off. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how many triceps you do, how many bicep curls you do, you're going to have really toned arms with forward shoulders, and you're not going to like how that looks. So these exercises are here to help you with this. And what I think with any product you're trying to sell is you need to understand what they think their problem is, and then help them understand how what you can do can give them what they want. And what people, if they feel seen and heard, there is that trust that is built up that they truly want. And that is what I've always honed in on. And I tell people, I'm like, that is something you can recreate with anything. Like, as long as you tell people, here's what you said you wanted, here's what I'm seeing, here's how this can help. Like that. So that's how it's really funny. Like, I did not think that my interpersonal communication degree would at all be something I ever used. And what I do is I'm using it all the time, because it is like listening to people and really sharing with them what you heard.
Yeah.
And when you do that, like it's really funny. The other day I was at the Soho House, I was being interviewed on memberships and e-commerce.
Hmm.
And there's people at the panel with me. And I mean, like I was small potatoes compared to the guy next to me deals with $100 million of ad spend a year for the companies he oversees.
Hmm.
And then the next guy, he was like the fifth hire for Project One Way and all these different,
Hmm.
like, just insane. And I had shared, we have a product that we often sell and pre-sell and people have to wait 4 months for it,
Hmm.
and the guy is like, how are you doing that? Like,
Yeah.
how is it even possible? That is magic. And I was like, it's magic. And also it's not,
Hmm.
it's bringing people along the journey and telling them how what you created for them is partly because they wanted it and how they're part of it.
Hmm.
And what people are so they think, if I just get something that's on subscription or membership, you put it through a calculator on an Excel sheet and it's like
Hmm.
millions of dollar product. But each one of those things you sell is a person, and people want to be valued.
Hmm.
And if they don't feel valued, I don't care how much they need the thing that you're going to do, they will find it from somewhere else. So taking the time to make sure that you see each person, like I get every Stripe email from every
Hmm.
single member. I know their names
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they are a person, and
Hmm.
I am focused on how we can impact their lives more. And so that means I need to know what they need and why they signed up and what they think
Hmm.
they're getting so that we can really communicate with them.
Wow. Yeah, the seen, heard, and valued piece is something that a lot of people talk about, but actually seeing it played out throughout going from a student to a teacher to helping other teachers adopt that more what they think about as intangible, right? It's not a metric they typically
Hmm.
measure themselves on. It's like revenue
Yeah.
or new students.
Yeah.
But if it's a student that comes in for one class and doesn't repeat, then and they felt like they were just another cog in the wheel.
Hmm.
That's not a lifetime customer, and that sounds like that's what you're building is a community of people who are along for the process of developing the next platform or the next great
Yeah.
class because their input is valued, they're heard, you're listening to them, you're being compassionate, asking them questions, and then that results in that next thing that you roll out to the community, which
Yeah.
if people ask for it and you deliver it, it's a no-brainer for them to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
like, you know, the reason I even coach other teachers and mentor them to be a better teacher is because I actually know I'm not for everyone.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm on a mission for more bodies do Pilates. So for me, if I know I'm not for everyone, there are going to be people here going, yeah, Leslie, I want autonomy, but really just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
That's fine. I hope you go do Pilates. You may not get enough from me, and that's okay. Try it out. But if it's not,
Hmm.
find another teacher that speaks to you. And my goal is, how can I make sure that teachers stay making more, like making an actual living?
Hmm.
So often, so few are. And so during the pandemic, people are like, oh, studios are closing. And I was like, studios that closed that were not in California, New York, or Washington, if we're talking about
Hmm.
the United States, they did not have a model that was actually going to survive anything, because
Hmm.
most other places were only closed for 3 months, if that. So if you can't survive 3 months without being with your customers,
Hmm.
there is a problem there, which means a lot of teachers were not making enough money. And it shouldn't just be that if you work in an office and wear a suit and tie that you can make a six-figure living. There has to
Hmm.
be a way for every person to be able to make the living they want to make. And so for me, my goal is like, if I am not the right teacher for you, I want the right teacher for you to be available when you're
Hmm.
ready. Because if they're not, then you don't get the thing that I know is going to change your life. That's going to add to everything you already do. And so I really am super focused on that. And it's not the easiest thing to do. Um, but it is really cool, and it's
Hmm.
really fun to see
Yeah.
what people are out there doing that's different than me. And we can be doing the same thing. Everyone listen, there's very few people who are coming up with this brand new thing that's never been invented before. We're all kind
Hmm.
of taking other ideas and building off of them. But it's okay if someone doesn't love what you have to do, because there's something else out there. But really knowing what you have to do and focus on the person. And a lot of studios who focus on, or companies who focus on, we had 30 new clients today, the conversion rate was this. That's fine. That gives
Hmm.
you metrics to do KPIs and understand like where you could be doing better. But if you don't know who those 30 people were, and like where they heard from you and why they came and what's going on with them, what's going on in that community, your numbers will only take you so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're chasing something that is never going to be good enough, because it's always, once we get to 30, now we need 40, then we need 50. So you're chasing what I call the silver rabbit. So from a teacher standpoint, I know a lot of the listeners are curious about what makes a great teacher in all areas of life, but have there been any consistencies that you've seen in Pilates teachers that separated those great ones from the ones that kind of flailed out and weren't able to make it work?
Yeah, I think that being a great teacher, you have to be a great observer. You know, you can know the ins and outs of everything, but if you can't observe that the eyes are glazing over, or if you can't see that like people are doing the choreography but they're not connected, it's only going to go so far. People don't get benefits if they're just doing choreography. Right? If you think Pilates is easy, I can tell you right now you're doing choreography. And that's fine. You got to learn the choreography and then you got to get deeper. But to me, having that observation skill to understand that. And then the next thing is like, you also have to understand there's different learning styles out there. Only 30% of people really are auditory learners. You know,
I hadn't heard that.
And like that means that there's a lot of people who are visual and kinesthetic. And so repeating myself is not always the best way to get people to understand an exercise. And so I find, especially in my industry, the best teachers are the ones who can see that you are disconnected and give you an exercise to teach you that disconnection, not repeat myself. And so even in an online space, all of the classes are, okay, this is the theme. And this is the exercise we're talking about, and this is how it is. We learn it in this exercise and this one, because another thing to think about is we all have strengths. So there are exercises that are going to come easier to you, Greg, than to me, right? And so, but if I only focus on exercise I can't do well yet, it's just going to be putting like a round peg in a square, hole, like trying to make it work if I just keep practicing the same thing over again. I think a lot of people like, I'm really weak here. Let me just keep hammering that in. But really, if we actually look back and go, well, what are you really good at? And how does that exercise actually show up in this one? What if, like, push-ups are not something I've ever been awesome at. I have really long arms and they're really spindly and I have really long legs. Well, what if I use my legs more? How can I do a push-up better if I actually use my legs? And we keep saying it's a full body exercise. So how are those working? And what if I can help people see what exercise they do well with and use it in the ones that they don't feel those connections in or they don't feel strong? That to me makes a really great teacher, because your words can only go so far. They're only going to go in so much. But when you can actually find ways to change people on the inside, that's where it's going to be. So those observation and then really being able to connect the dots for someone in their body without the words is going to make them feel, first of all, people need autonomy, but they will always attribute she or he made me feel like this, right? Like they'll put that win together and it makes them want to keep coming back to you.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely something to that, because people say they don't remember what you said, but how you made them feel. And you think about the best artists, whether it's a singer, somebody who does paintings, and they're so engaged with not necessarily the art that they're delivering, but how it makes somebody feel and feeding off of their energy. Sometimes the best concerts aren't the best singers. It's how they're connecting to the audience, how they're going up and down based off of how the audience is giving them energy back. And I think a lot of people don't think about that from a business standpoint when you're serving somebody, delivering a service or a product, is kind of thinking about the next layers of what this is going to do for somebody, but what it's going to make them ultimately feel like, and then taking that back as feedback to either keep doing that or not do that. I think we almost like want to shoehorn our service or product to achieve the result of how it makes us feel and not necessarily the other person. And that's, I think the best businesses create that feeling, and then price is secondary. Which I think a lot of people, as entrepreneurs, especially early on, which a lot of our listeners are 3 to 5 years in business. Some of them are extremely successful. Some are still trying to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
And I still see people with 20 plus years business experience still not clicking with how am I making people feel and using that as the metric.
People think they should make it cheaper than their competitor by $1 or whatever it is. Like, and that same panel, the guy was like, the company that wins is the one who can spend the most to get the client. And I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't have any money to spend to acquire the client. We do some ads, but it is not how we get a lot of our clients. A lot of our clients are a lot of connecting with people and in-person capacities and some online capacities, and then our own clients. And so people think I can buy the person, or if I'm the cheapest person, I'm going to win. And we are actually more expensive than our competitors by a lot. We started out as being about $1 or $2 more than the other two platforms. And we thought we were being clever by making like a weekly payment. And so who doesn't want to pay weekly? That's so easy. And we weren't really growing. 2 years in, like, you'd be surprised when the pandemic hit. It wasn't like people fled to my 2-year-old company. In fact, we lost people because they're like, I'm getting free stuff on Instagram. I'm like, you're going to cancel a $5 a week membership? Like that just really like hurt. I was like, I don't understand. And so what I realized is I was like, actually, we're keeping compared to our competitors because our price is apples to apples. So what if we actually just flip that on its head and make our price be what I think we are, which is a boutique online fitness company. We actually are, like, when you think of a boutique, what is it? It's someone who curates the experience. It's not fluorescent lighting. It is, they know your name. When I ran boutiques, I would call you when something came in. I think you'll like this. That's not what department stores do. Department stores wait for you to come in. They put a sale on the window. So how does so I really thought it was a boutique. So what is a boutique membership pricing? And that pricing, it is more than others. And and we still have that weekly option if people need it, but we primarily are a monthly and annual membership based thing. And what that allows me to do is, one, have teachers I can pay, and two, it allows me to really focus on the actual members. I'm not focused on, I need more. Of course we want more members because I'm on this mission. But if I were to just do it at that low ticket rate, then I have to bet on quantity of people, not the quality that I'm giving. And so that I think people should understand, like, price, no one is, I always tell the people that I'm coaching on their business, no one is looking for Pilates on sale near me. They're not. They're not looking for yoga on sale. They're not even, like, some things they'll look for on sale are like the things they don't really want to buy. But if you think your thing is actually going to change a problem that they have, then really you have to get rid of, like, how do I discount this, or how do I win on price? Instead, like, win on that transformation and bring them along on that journey. You'll build trust. People will stick things out with you. A year-ish ago, we had a situation where infinite traffic was sent to our website. There was an old plugin on the site, and they sent infinite traffic to this thing, and we overloaded our server, and all of our sites went down. Coaching site, podcast site, everything gone. And luckily we had a lot of things in place. Everyone was protected. Nothing was hacked. When we were able to figure out what the problem was, we were left with this, like, really slow moving site. It was not the experience I wanted anyone to have, nor would I be patient for it. But because I was so connected with all of our members, because I've been so consistent in communication, because they were so clear on our values, that I lost 0 members, even though we're more expensive than our competitors. And I was transparent. Here's what we know. Here's what we're doing. Here's how you can access your classes. And we'll be back tomorrow with more information. And people will forgive. It's not even a mistake that we made. They will forgive obstacles and weird things because they trust you and they are part of building this together. And they will show up for themselves because they feel like they're in collaboration with you. And so for all of you new business owners, like, I know everyone out there is like, just buy ads and go on launch and you'll have a 6-figure launch. And it's okay if you spent high 5 figures to get there. I disagree. I actually think that taking some messy action and being really, really connected to the person you're trying to serve is going to make you win the long run.
Yeah, and it sounds like it has from you go through a catastrophe where the platform is what connects you to the customer, but in reality, the platform was just a medium. You already had that connection to the person, and they had trust in you that the process was still continuing even if the platform wasn't there. And I think a lot of businesses, we think about like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Some of these platforms, if they're no longer there, people either go look for something else, or they're not really attached to it because the interaction is just the platform. And if the form and the platform is not there, people kind of are like, what's next? Where do I go next? Who do I screw over this time? And they go a different route. So I think that's critical, that whatever platform you're building, whether it's a technology or a service, that the connection to the person is what's most important and what is going to help your business scale and have that longevity that we all want, which I think is extremely critical. One of the questions that I have is, what is the difference between Pilates and yoga?
Oh, that's a great question. So many things. The only reason I really think that they get lumped together is they end up in the same room at your gym and they use a mat. So you actually should not use a yoga mat to do Pilates. It's too thin.
Okay.
All right. Yep. So like if you are using the yoga mat to do Pilates, you better grab a towel or a blanket because your spine on the floor is not going to feel so good. They also seem very similar because of that body weight. But where I find yoga is, ideally yoga should be a strength-based practice. A lot of times it's gotten that emphasis on more of a flexibility practice and a stretching practice. But so yoga, you actually often repeat poses. You go through flows, right? In Pilates, we actually do everything less than 10 reps and we don't really repeat it. Unless you're replacing something you can't do yet with something that you could do, that's going to help build the endurance. The other thing is that you don't need to do a Pilates class for 90 minutes. You can do it for 20. You can do it for 15 and still get those benefits. Whereas a yoga class, you really do
build up.
Need to you find it's really hard to find a 30-minute yoga class. You're looking at an hour and a half for a lot of those things. They both emphasize breath, but they breathe differently. In yoga, you do deep belly breaths. You're letting those abs go and really working that. In Pilates, we actually cannot let our abdominals breathe, let go. If you do, you're going to be disconnected from your center. So we focus your center as anything that's the muscles around your axial skeleton. So from the tailbone to the crown of your head. So that means shoulder girdle, pelvis, your abdominals in the front, but also all those muscles in the back. So once we connect those muscles, I need to keep that. And then I challenge those connections by moving your arms and your legs, which means you do more lateral breathing. Also, you breathe in and out through your nose. Ideally, that's why your nose exists. It's actually the best way to breathe. And in yoga, it's like a lot of exhaling out the mouth, different things like that. So there's some similarities, but the emphasis is very, very different. And so the one yoga practice that I could say would be very similar to a Pilates practice would be more of an Ashtanga. Ashtanga has an order to it, but again, it still repeats the moves. Whereas in Pilates, we're actually going to start lying down, work our way to sitting up, to kneeling, and then to standing. There's also a massive emphasis on lateral work in Pilates. It's different than any modality, but also yoga. A lot of things we do, running, you're cycling, a lot of weight lift, everything's in that frontal plane motion. Everyone's just working their front body. Pilates is very emphasized on working the back body. So even though you're in flexion, your arms have to be connected to your back. So you're actually really working your back muscles out. That's what actually improves the posture. But so it's similar. And once you do a Pilates practice, a true one, you'll find very different. And also, mat Pilates is only one part of Pilates. It is the part that Joseph Pilates wants everyone doing. It is the most accessible in terms of I could do it on a floor in a hotel room, at a park, at the airport, which I've done many a time. The equipment was all designed to help me do the mat work better.
Yeah, I think about the reformer. That's where you lay on your back.
Yes.
That's what I always associated Pilates with, the reformer.
Yep.
And I never even knew that there was a matted Pilates practice.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're not alone. A lot of people don't know that. And people will say, oh, I do reformer Pilates. And I'm going to tell you that is a marketing tactic that they have helped you buy into, which is totally fine. But why the reformer is amazing is if you have some disconnected parts of your body that you need support in, the reformer offers some closed chain movements that allow you to find how do I stretch my legs out and pull them in from my stomach. A lot of us, if we straighten our legs out and bend them, it's from the knee, and it's kind of like gravity. So the reformer helps you kind of push out into some springs and pull back in so that when you go on the mat to do it, you can do that. But a lot of people only do reformer. Yeah. And my big thing is like, if you're listening to this, you're like, I already do reformer, I'm nailing it. I'm going to call you out and do some mat. You can still go to your reformer studio. I have no problems with that. But you've got to give yourself an opportunity to move your own body. Because the reformer and all that equipment is there to help teach your body connections it needs. But if we always use that, it's kind of like just always using any crutch. You're only going to get as strong as it lets you.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned the front chain, because oftentimes I even find myself doing this, and toward the end of my baseball career, I started to do things in reverse to try to like reverse all of the muscular disformities of doing the same motion over and over again. And I think Pilates sounds like it's the answer for that balance of trying to get the back to engage like the front has been for 20 plus years, which, a lot of people sitting, like you're bending over, not reversing that the other way.
Everyone has forward head pitch now, right? Like it's a big thing. And so like, I don't have my posture, I'm just gonna pull my shoulders back. Shoulders being pulled back is not actually the answer. Your mom was sort of right, but what happens when you just pinch your shoulders back is your upper traps actually activate more, which is not gonna feel really great for your neck later. And the thing is that the more forward our head is getting in our life, the less likely we're able to receive information, because we start to see things coming at us as an attack. We go into that lizard brain the more forward our head is. It's this fascinating fact in science I heard. I was like, are you kidding? It's so crazy. But going back to what you were saying with your back body, like a lot of people will feel pain in the shoulder in the front. Pain in the shoulder in the front is not where the injury is or the disconnection or the imbalance is. That is in the back. And because our shoulders are more forward, see, we have phasic muscles and we have postural muscles. Phasic muscles turn on for an action. Throwing a pitch, a lot of those muscles are phasic muscles. They can work and they can take action, but they get tired if you were just to like throw pitch after pitch. Like there's a reason why pitchers take a break between pitching, right? You gotta let those muscles break. Whereas a lot of muscles of your back, your hamstrings, on that back body is a lot of postural muscles. But what are we doing? We're sitting and we're slouched. So those muscles are actually not turning off, and they're like trying to support you, but you're rounded forward. So they're like, if you think of like a little guy with like a crane, like trying to pull you up, he's tired and he's holding on tight. So then you get rigid. So then you go to do an action and you tear something. And so the reality is we have to have flexibility and strength, and it's not just pulling our shoulders back, but actually pulling them wide and learning how to, it's actually a lot of athletes are doing Pilates. It used to be very secret. Now it's very public. But the reason they do it is if you only build those big muscles, the primary muscles that are working, and you don't ever work those little ones, you have an imbalance. And if you can get that back body working, you actually were to throw your arm from the muscles of your upper back as well, you would have more power, more stamina, more stability, and less injury for sure. Wow. And all of us in our jobs, those of you who are like, okay, I'm just sitting at my desk. The thing is that if there's Amy Cuddy was like, if we stand in the power stance for 5 minutes, we have confidence, right? I promise you, most of you can't stand that power stance for 5 minutes. Yeah. Not without your knees locking out, your feet feeling numb, you getting tired. That's a long time to stand in your own 2 feet. You have to have strong upper back, strong core, the ability to stand in the muscles of your legs and not flatten out your ankles or your arches or lock your knees out. So to really get that, you actually do have to train for those things. And everyone's head going forward, shoulders going forward. The reason you don't feel confident walking into a room is because science says you won't. And the reason why people perceive you're not confident is because science says we don't. And so the more we can actually strengthen and work our back body, the better. And so I don't think it's Pilates versus. So anyone listening, I don't want to take away anything you already love. If you love yoga, you get to keep it. You love to run, keep going. But you do need to add a Pilates practice in there. Your form will improve. Your risk of injury will reduce. and it's going to make everything you love better.
Yeah.
It really
Wow.
does. Like if you want to chase after your children, you
Mhm.
will be able to do that without risk of injuring yourself because I like to say I help people fall better. I really love to
Mhm.
train people. I'm like, the movements we're doing in Pilates is not so you do Pilates better.
Mhm.
It's so that when you reach up to the top shelf, you don't pull something. It's so that if you miss a step, you don't have to think, what do my legs do? Your body will do it for you. That's why we work
Mhm.
out. That's why we do Pilates.
Yeah, it's survival, and a lot of people don't think about activities that we do like yoga or working out as it's enhancing our life. It's more of like this is what I need to do to keep a baseline and not decline.
Hmm.
So I think it definitely enhances. I've been working with somebody on biomechanics to try to even things out,
Yeah.
and he hasn't even mentioned Pilates yet. So I'm gonna ding him on that
Oh,
one. I'm gonna be like, what have you
yeah.
been doing with me?
Yeah,
So.
and a
Mm.
lot of people have misunderstandings about
Mhm.
Pilates. They think it was dancers, they think it's
Mhm.
only for women, they think it's stretchy. And that's unfortunate. That is a
Mhm.
marketing issue we have to figure out. However, it is biomechanics and it is
Mhm.
really amazing what it can do when you get the right teacher. So if you've tried Pilates and you didn't like it, try someone else.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
you did the mat and it didn't feel good on your lower back, that's okay. Get on a reformer, go do a
Mhm.
Cadillac, get those connections, and because the mat might just be more advanced than what your core can handle right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to fill people in on how you suggest them getting started. I think a lot of people through this episode will realize how much more depth there is to Pilates and what it actually gets them as an end result, which a lot of people want those end results, but
Mhm.
they weren't aware before this episode on what Pilates is and how to carry it out. How would you recommend someone starting in their
Yeah.
Pilates journey? Is there a resource you have or?
Yes, I would love if you start with me. That means you have no bad habits. I'm just saying. Okay.
Yeah, right.
But if you go to opc.me/challenge,
Mhm.
so opc.me/challenge, OPC is onlinepilatesclasses.com. That website will actually offer you a few free options. You'll see a mat challenge and a
Mhm.
reformer one, and you'll see a full body in 15, which is our beginner series. Um, the mat one is 4 weeks long, and the first class is 10 minutes. And
Nice.
if you can't do 10, do two.
Mhm.
And what I love is you'll have access to that class for a week. And so your job is to see how if you got through 2 minutes and the next day you got through 2.5, like compare
Mhm.
yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there it'll go to 20 and then to 30 and then to 40.
Mhm.
If you don't want to move up, do the first 20. It's
Mhm.
really okay with me. It's really actually, I love when I read in the comments, like, I just only did 20.
Yeah.
Great. Finishing is optional to me. I think there's a lot of pressure, like I have to do the whole workout or it's not worth doing. And that's not true. You have to do what
Mhm.
you're capable of right now. So that's what I would recommend. If you're not someone who likes to work out online, but you are wanting to do Pilates, I do have a physical product you can take
Mhm.
everywhere. They're flashcards. And so if you go to onlinepilatesclasses.com, you'll see our flashcards. And the mat deck is one you can literally take everywhere. It's about the size of a DVD. I think people still know what that looked like back in the day,
Mhm.
but it's not
Yeah.
very big and you fit into your gym bag.
Mhm.
You can use it you can scan a QR code on the card and we'll take you a visual of the exercise, or you can read the back and see how to do the exercise. And you can actually just pick 5 cards or pick 2 cards and you can create your
Mhm.
own Pilates workout. So
Yeah.
if you don't want to hear the sound of my voice, you can still do Pilates. If you don't want to be guided, it's okay. Like I
Mhm.
really did create those so that people could have access to Pilates no matter how they like it.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll definitely put those links in the comments so people can access the challenges. I love challenges as an athlete. I think people really cling to those. I love how you've taken it off of digital because some people, they're staring at their phone when they're working out, and sometimes it's hard to, if they just lay out a couple that they want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
it really, I think, allows them to connect with themselves in a different fashion. Leslie, thanks so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to hear about your journey, hear a little bit more about what Pilates means to you. And I think that vision that you have and that impact, it sells itself because you bring that student mindset to, be a great teacher, but also teach other teachers on how to carry that out
Mm.
and build their legacy in something that makes and leaves people better off.
Thank you for having me,
Yeah.
Greg. This is awesome.
Absolutely. One last question that we like to ask every guest that joins the show is, what does connection mean to you?
It's such an interesting, because I believe in connection so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my values, so I love. But to me, it's having a relationship with yourself.
Mhm.
that is not concrete. It's a construct, which is a humble, the poet
Mhm.
would say. And so it allows, if we have a connection with ourselves, we're able to understand who we are today,
Mhm.
each day, so that we can truly show up in our best self, even on the days we don't feel like we are. So that's what
Yeah.
connection is for
Yeah,
me.
it's extremely powerful. I know everybody needs to hear that today. Thanks so much for joining us, and until next time.